Welcome to RSA Conference 2024. We're here recording live from Broadcast Alley in Moscone West. This interview is sponsored by Blumira. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is Jim Simpson, CEO of Blumira.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
How you doing, Jim?
I am great. It's
Good
been a
show
really,
so far?
Yes, it has been. It's nice to see everybody back here. It's pretty lively, and it's been interesting listening to the conversations.
Yeah, so I was actually having a conversation earlier. Somebody was asking me, why I liked certain products over other products. And one of the points I brought up is there's a lot of stuff in that expo hall that only a Fortune 100 or Fortune 1000 will be able to afford, either because of the cost of the product or the cost of the labor to implement and use that product. So today we're talking about leveling the cybersecurity playing field. Yep. And the heroes building stuff for the SMBs, for the lower end of the market, where they don't have as much insurance, they can't withstand attacks as much, and they sometimes the adversaries, the attacks against them, the technology is the same, so what made you want to build for this market?
Personally, in working with cybersecurity technology over the years, one thing that we noticed is that when we as cybersecurity practitioners build for other practitioners, things tend to be more complex and complicated. And in my own career, helped start a company called Duo Security a few years ago in Michigan. And what was interesting back then is we did a lot more in-person work, and we couldn't convince anybody to move to the state of Michigan. So we actually ended up building a cybersecurity company in the state and onboarded a lot of people into cybersecurity and realized that it was really more about like the accessibility and making it easier for people to understand things. And so I think that company was really successful at serving an underserved market. And if you've been paying attention to the news at all companies, regardless of size, are a target for breach. And the companies that are out there in the SMB can't necessarily afford the solutions that have been in the market for a long time. So that was a thing for us where it's like, well, this is a great market to be in. We can actually help move the needle in terms of security outcomes. Why not do it? And we have some of the DNA that goes into building products for that market. So, and then I think the last thing was technology has evolved so much in the last few years that you can solve this kind of problem at scale for smaller organizations now. So that was kind of like the interesting opportunity to go after there.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things we get into when we talk about more down market, mid-market, SMBs is how you sell to them. You start getting into channels, you start getting into managed services. Who's your customer that you're selling to?
So the ICP, the ideal customer profile, tends to be an IT operator, maybe a director of IT, because in that area of the market you don't often have security practitioners. The IT people may understand like security principles, but they're not like SOC analysts and what have you. So that's the primary person that we work with in these organizations.
And you've got SIM, XDR. Historically, SIM is the example of a labor-heavy product to implement and manage. So how'd you handle that?
Yeah, so that's all about first principles. So there's been a couple of buzzwords at this conference, like AI, and I think that like strapping AI onto something where the first principles were devised 20 to 30 years ago may not necessarily drive the outcomes in broader parts of the market. So for us, we really looked at like, what do those people know already, and how can we actually make them effective? Like, what is their day-to-day like? They don't, they might be subject to the same compliance requirements, but they don't necessarily have the same budgets, and they really don't have the time. And so, how do you make a product with outcomes that fit within those constraints? Requires just a total rethink of the first principles that go into the product. And a lot of it has to do with, we think that security problems can be solved within the first standard deviation of the mean. And if you've been in security for a long time, a lot of the products out there can go way beyond that, and sometimes I think lose sight of the basics.
Yeah. I mean, thinking about my experiences deploying SIMs, which I've done several times, first thing is nothing out of the box worked for me. So I had to build all that stuff from scratch. I had to build the reports, the alerts, the Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So this, I mean, let's just make it concrete. So that is the exact thing you have to think about. Um, when a customer comes to us, they'll sign up on our website. They can enroll in a free trial. So there's, they don't have to talk to anybody if they don't
Oh,
want
nice.
to.
Yeah.
We tell them, send us all of your data. So they don't have to think about which log files, which APIs to hook up. We just say, send everything, because we figured out how to ingest at scale without it being a cost problem for us. And then I think we work with probably 250 vendor integrations, and we're in the long
Oh, wow.
tail of, adding more integrations. But the cool thing is that if you send us all of your data and we build another integration, then you automatically get the value of that as it comes
Right.
online. You don't have to pay for that either. But then we automatically turn on detections associated with those streams of data as they come in, so you don't have to turn anything on either. So we make it really, really easy for someone to onboard, because if you're going to deliver a product to that part of the market, you have to get rid of all of that. So like you were saying, it took a long time to set up a SIM, probably months. Like for us, probably the longest amount of time is 2 days, but on average we see people get up and running with a product in a couple of hours.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's just a complete game changer. And the irony is that the market that we serve doesn't actually understand that it's that amazing. Like you would be like, what, 2 days? Like, wow.
It just does what it's
right,
supposed to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, unless they go tour an enterprise or something like that, all these people just sit here and stare at alerts all day? What?
Right, and also, well, if you think about that too, it's like there's a lot of like stress and burnout associated with having to do that kind of job. So
and that's where we start people in this field.
Right, and so shouldn't we be designing products that actually allow them to work on higher order things? And that again was another thought that went into this, but we have to do it that way because we don't have our customers don't have access to SOC analysts in their organization.
So when I think about your competitors, most of them have been around a long time, probably long enough to have some legacy stuff and maybe not built with these same first principles.
Yep.
So maybe I'm already calling it out, but what kind of separates you? Why would somebody go with a Blumira over some of those guys?
Well, one of some of the feedback that we hear from customers, because some of them will have some kind of security tool in place.
Right.
What they find is that we will report on incidents before the thing that was supposed to report on the incident will, because we're ingesting the same log files, but because of the way that we've designed the product, we have purview over all of our customers' data, and so we're able to see like which detections are firing, which ones aren't. We can also spin up things a lot more quickly and then test it across all of that data to see what might actually be effective. And so that allows us to deliver things in real time much more quickly than the incumbent vendors have done. And the other part of it is that we also don't overwhelm our customers with hundreds or thousands of alerts. We deliver something called a finding, and so you'll get maybe one or two of those. It's like a 100x, 1000x, like fewer in terms of scale.
Right.
But then you're getting something that you actually have to work on, and it's going to like lead to some sort of positive security outcome for you. The important part about that is we make no assumption about the operator's knowledge when they're operating on the finding. So say there's a suspect finding, like a new Windows administrator has been created on the network. Could be benign, you've got a new IT friend working with you, or common like way to cover your tracks. So we explain that in our heads up display, but where the real value comes from is we have a set of, a decision tree that we walk them through for them to solve the problem themselves. And the first question we ask in that case is, did you set up a Windows administrator? If it's yes, then it's great. We'll close the finding, log it to the audit trail. If no, then we walk them through the next step, and the next step, and the next step, until they solve it themselves. And if for any reason they get stuck, we do actually have a very small SOC analyst team at Blumira that they can talk to in real time, which does double duty, helps them solve that. But then we also try to figure out where can we make this better, because we don't necessarily want to do more of that. We want to empower our customers to learn security through practice. Right.
Yeah. So I feel like, in product development, that's really important to have that feedback loop, right? Right. So that there's another company. I don't think you really compete with them, but Red Canary kind of has a story around that where like they got away with 3 analysts for the longest time. It was really impressive because they were constantly improving their efficiency.
Yeah, we are in a very similar position right now, and again, the idea there is like delivering a white glove experience to a group of people who may never have had that before with an IT vendor, but then who probably never would have experienced that because they didn't have anybody helping them previously.
So I imagine you must be doing a lot of detection engineering and deduplication and correlation in the background.
Yes.
Stuff hidden from them, hiding that complexity.
Yes, exactly.
To build these findings. And,
yep. Yeah. We have a detection engineering team. It's also a very small but mighty team, and that team, because of the way that the infrastructure works, they can deploy new detections without us having to do anything on the part of the end user. We don't have to contact them for them to get the benefit of it. We can just say, oh my gosh, there's a 0-day out there. How can our product help with that? And then how can we deploy that? And then how can they benefit from that? So it's really fun to do that because like these kinds of things I just don't think were possible technically even 5 years ago.
Yeah. So where are you going? What is the future for Blumira?
So for us, if you follow us, you'll see that we launch things all the time. I'm a former product person, so I'm kind of addicted to getting product out there. But in particular, we listen to our customers in terms of like what they want, and delivering this kind of product to SMBs is really challenging, and so we're just going to continue focusing on like how can we make it easier for them to get into it. How can we add more functionality with what they've got today? How can we listen to the things that they're looking for and add those things into the platform itself? But really not looking to go much beyond that. And maybe for us as a company, one of the bigger things will be helping organizations in other parts of the world, because we get a lot of inbound interest from overseas, but servicing the US is challenging enough. So for us, it's like focus on the core principles here, because that is challenging enough.
Yeah, and before we wrap up here, tell me about your company's affinity for hedgehogs. I'm not sure if you can capture this on the camera, but
so hedgehog. So our mascot, her name is Mira the hedgehog, and our co-founders have an affinity for hedgehogs because they're kind of spiky on the outside, kind of like the security practice, but soft on the inside, like us, and very, very food motivated, like everybody, right? So
that's great. Thank you so much for joining me today on Security Weekly. It was
My
a
pleasure.
lot of fun.
Great, thank you.
All right, if you want to learn more about Blumira, you can visit securityweekly.com/Blumira RSAC, and also go to securityweekly.com/RSAC for all our other coverage coming from RSA. Stay tuned. In a few moments, we'll have another interview.